The Kansas City Chiefs are back on the practice field, and we got exciting action to cover both on the offense and defensive side of the ball. But before we do dive into that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. Without further ado, let's dive right back into practice. Today we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball, and we're going to mention one of our rookies. And honestly, when you feature this rookie draft class, a lot of people don't tend to focus on this guy. When we mention rookies, we talk about a George Karlaftis, go back on the offensive side of the ball to Sky Moore. You hear little rumblings about Brian Cook, Leo Chanel, the list goes on. But not a lot of us talk about our first draft pick in Trent McDuffie. And that may be because a lot of people thought we reached for him in that position, or it wasn't technically a need. Definitely when someone available like a Jermaine Johnson was there. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs should have corrected a lot of those wrongs, and honestly, I don't think it was a wrong. Just because they passed on a Jermaine Johnson and they got a George Karlaftis, Chiefs Kingdom shouldn't be too upset about that. And if you look more into it, cornerback was a huge need. We just thought pass rusher was more of a need, but with the loss of Javarius Ward, we needed someone to come in and cover that guy. And in pre-mock draft too, Trent McDuffie was getting selected way higher than that, like in the 15 range. And for him to be available around the 20th pick, Kansas City found that as a steal, and honestly, it was too. And then we go into training camp, and I don't know if it's because he's been quiet throughout training camp, or it's just because he's been steadily progressing and not making like those huge, spectacular plays that Chiefs Kingdom has been mentioning his name as one of the top rookies. Well, that all changed today. Trent McDuffie had two great pass breakups, one on Juju and one on Mecole Hardman. The one on Juju was on the sideline, and he just flipped his hips, got his hand out, and made a play on the ball. Spectacular play to see. And then the one on Mecole, great awareness too. Mecole had him beat thoroughly throughout the route, but you play the whole route, and that's what he did. And he stuck his hand at the end, popped the ball out, and Mecole Hardman dropped it. Those are the type of plays Trent McDuffie has learned to develop to play throughout camp too. It's like he's found his weaknesses and he's found his strengths, and he knows that he can stick with the man in coverage too. And he's been beat on some plays too, but on these type of plays where he's basically just getting his arms in there and making a play on the ball, that's where he's finding is one of his strengths, where you may have me beat in the beginning of the route, but if I stay with you, I'm going to win that rep. And that's what he did today, and that's what we're going to see him progress throughout training camp and in preseason too, because Trent McDuffie is going to be a huge asset with this team. Like I mentioned, he's basically replacing a Javarius Ward. He's going to be your number 2 cornerback alongside L'Jarius Sneed, now that Sneed is your number 1. And then those slot corners are going to be interesting to see. We haven't seen too much of Fenton because he's been injured throughout a training camp. Joshua Williams has been impressing too, and honestly, that's another defensive guy we've been mentioning more than Trent McDuffie. And Trent McDuffie has been slighted for maybe all the wrong reasons too. And I'm not saying like slighted like disrespected, but it might be disrespected because none of us are mentioning him like that. We were lucky to get him at the selection, and I think if he proves his worth, he can be a Pro Bowl caliber type of cornerback, maybe have his own island, maybe be a shutdown type of player. Again, like I mentioned with this defense time in and time out, you just have to give it time, because I don't know if the defense will click right away. We've never seen it throughout the Andy Reid tenure, when no matter who's been the defensive coordinator. For some reason, the defensive scheme tends to click in November. Hopefully, I am praying that it clicks way sooner than that, because if it does, and then this offense is gelling too, this will be one of the deadliest Kansas City Chiefs teams we have seen in a long time. And Trent McDuffie will be a huge role in that too, because once this season starts, a lot of people know what L'Jarius Sneed brings to the game, but some don't either. So I don't see Sneed being tested like that. His coverage skills are good, but also too, his hitting ability and his physicality to the game is what's going to defer quarterbacks to go to the other side of the ball. So Trent McDuffie is going to be tested early, and if he can make plays on the ball and have good coverage skills, and you have 2 lockdown guys or potential lockdown guys, it's going to be hard to throw against this defense. And then that just gives the pass rush even more of ability to get to the quarterback too, because if the coverage is good in the back, that means there's a lot more time the quarterback is holding on to the ball, and the pass rushers are going to get to the quarterback. So I'm excited to see what this defense brings. I just hope it kind of clicks sooner than later. I'm hoping, I know it won't be right away, but let's say after week 3. Because it happens time in and time out that we just see Kansas City gives up 30 points week 1, 38 the next week, 45, and then we're like, oh fuck, all hell breaks loose. Let's like kind of tighten that up a little bit. And a lot of us get concerned because this is a young core. So what's gonna change? Like, because usually with young rookie players, that's where the miscues happen. But maybe with the young new leadership and young players ready to prove themselves, maybe that's the difference in the scheme, and maybe that's what makes this scheme come alive, and maybe that's how Spaz can dissect at his best. I'm excited to see how it all works out. I'm just excited for September, honestly. I love training camp and everything that it brings, but I want to see a game. That's why I'm excited for next Saturday when we play the Bears, because these rookies on this defensive side of the ball are going to get a lot of playing time, and it's going to be fun to watch. We're still going to stick on the defensive side of the ball, but we're going to talk about a veteran presence. Today was Carlos Dunlap's first practice as a Kansas City Chief in that number 8 jersey, and he looked good in it. And my first comment on it was, damn, this dude is big. Now, I mean big in a good way. Like, he is lengthy. He is the type of pass rusher Spags loves. Like, just watching him go up and take his reps, it's like he was bigger than every offensive lineman in height, length, and everything. And he just looked like a beast out there. He basically was destroying our second team O-line, which, again, a lot of people are going to be like, well, why is he going against the second team? It's his first day in practice. You got to get their feet wet. You can't just throw them out there, and you got to proceed with precaution. Last thing you want to do is throw him out there and he gets hurt. I love to see how he was doing against the second stringers, because as next week starts ramping up, he's going to be full on, full force against the ones, and then preseason too. I don't know how much reps and game time live action he's going to get, but if he gets a lot, it's going to be fun to see. And then there was also an interesting comment that Carlos Dunlap made a couple days ago too, saying that the reason he came to Kansas City, of course, he wants to get his 100 sacks. I think that's very doable. He's at 96. He just needs 4 sacks. He wants to average 8 a year. That is very doable. He mentioned he wants to win a ring. That's why he went to an organization that wins. Kansas City, also a perfect destination. But a comment that really caught my eye was he wants to be an every down player and be on the field the majority of the time, which kind of caught my eye, because when I mentioned Carlos Dunlap coming in, I thought he would have been a replacement for Melvin Ingram. And then I thought maybe George Karlaftis would be your left end and get most of the pass rushing duties. But if they both agreed on that, which I have no issue with whatsoever, that means maybe George Karlaftis in his rookie year will be more of the rotational guy and just be your straight rusher, which also too gives him time to learn behind the lights of a Frank Clark and a Dunlap, and even a Chris Jones too. And also too, brings another pass rushing dimension. Like, I know Spags, and I don't know how much he used to do it, or even last year too, but with his NASCAR packages and the Giants where he would just blitz everyone, and we do tend to see it, but it's not like we see it a lot. I think he could bring that a lot more in the scheme play, definitely with Carlos Dunlap. I'm excited to see Dunlap because I feel like he could be a big presence, and I feel like he can produce that 8 to 10 sacks. It's going to be interesting to see, because when you hear me talk about this defensive line, I've already mentioned Frank Clark has the potential to get 10 plus sacks. We know Chris Jones, when healthy, he's a 12-plus sack guy guaranteed at the defensive tackle spot. And then you mentioned Carlos Dunlap. I'm thinking he'll get 10-plus sacks. And I said George Karlaftis rookie year, 5 to 8. I'm booking a lot of sacks. And that's the high expectation I have for the defensive line. You got a lot of big-name players. And this isn't the first year that it's been all these big-name players either. They are highly paid, and last year was very underwhelming, and I think the whole D-line knows it. And even with the presence of our new defensive line coach, Joe Coleman, he brings that new presence where he was with Jacksonville too, when they had a mean line. Now, we may not have recalled the last couple years, but when Jacksonville had that lockdown defense and they were contending in an AFC championship game when they had no right to, with Blake Bortles being there, I don't want to say no right to, because that defense is basically what led them there, but to get them to that game, and Joe Coleman's presence has been mentioned from the likes of a Wharton, a Jones, a Clark. They are loving him, and if he brings that like demeanor to where, hey, we're going to have a nasty line, and we're going to get after the quarterback, and we're going to tackle the running backs in the backfield, I'm all excited for it. And I'm excited to see the veteran, I almost said veteranship. Is that a word? Okay, we'll go veteran presence that Carlos Dunlap brings to this defense, because it's going to help a lot. I mentioned I think he's a better presence than Melvin Ingram. Again, no slight to Ingram, but I think at this point in their career, Carlos Dunlap is just a better player. And now we're going to jump into the offensive side of the ball. Sky Moore had a couple good plays as usual. He's getting better day in and day out. That's nothing new. Juju still doing his thing, looking like the #1 wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. But we're going to focus on Mecole Hardman again because he is still having a camp like no other. And he did last year too, but the expectations I think are huge this year for Mecole Hardman. You've heard me mention it time in and time out on this channel, but it's contract year for him. We all know contract year, it's undefeated, and I feel like he has the biggest chip on his shoulder. He's not in Tyreek Hill's shadow no more. He's been more involved in the passing game too. I think he can be solidified that wide receiver #2. I do think Sky Moore is pushing that presence on there. I really don't know how to dissect what Kansas City can do because I don't know if I would think Mecole is your outside wide receiver or your inside guy either, but that's what I tend to think. But also too, is Sky your outside guy? Because I don't see that either. I know Juju is for sure your outside guy, but again, Juju excels best inside. All three of these guys excel best on the inside. It's going to be interesting to see the offensive rotation they bring week 1 because a lot of these guys excel on the inside. But again, it could be different schemings. We know Reed has fun with this offensive playbook. It's going to be interesting to see. Or you can bring the big guys in, like I know I mentioned in my previous video, but let's say Josh Gordon is on this team. He's a legit outside guy too. Or a Cornell Powell or someone like that. That's where KC has struggled to find these big body wide receivers. And maybe these smaller guys are the guys that will run the way and lead this offense into the next factor and be like, KC still has that legit wide receiver power. And before I get corrected on this, when I mean small, I don't want to slight what Juju is because Juju is a wide receiver basically playing a running back. The way he runs over people, that's big. But I'm talking big like 6'2", 6'3" guy. And that's just not what Juju is. And also too, Sky Moore's stature, even though he's small in height, them legs are tree trunks. He will run someone over. And then we got Mecole. Yeah, we can classify him in that small range. But also too, you ain't going to catch him. You just won't. It just can't happen. And I think this trio of wide receivers, they're my top 3 wide receivers on the team. And I think they're all 3 going to have a great year too. And yes, Sky Moore, I've come around now. As you heard me mention time in, time out on this channel is, I don't know how rookies produce in this system because we don't tend to see it right away. And we wait till like November and December and we're like, oh, there's the rookie we waited for. A la Nick Bolton last year when we thought he should have been on the field way sooner than he was. But I'm all for now seeing him every single day in camp. It's impossible to keep him on the field. He's going to be making plays in September. I'm sold on it now. He's going to be making plays right away week 1. And speaking of Mecole Hardman, he is a play of the day. He was contested with Trent McDuffie because Trent McDuffie's pass breakups were really good. But Mecole Hardman made, such a nice catch on Nazeeh Johnson. He didn't have to do the rook like that. Welcoming him into the NFL before he even played a preseason game. But he mossed him, one-handed catch. It was a sight to see. It was beautiful to see. It was something we needed to see. Not just from Mecole, but also we had a day off yesterday, so we needed these highlight videos because I don't know about you, Chiefs Kingdom, but one day was enough for me. I need to see this constant content of the Kansas City Chiefs, and I was excited to see. Honestly, today felt like a lot of players were flying around the ball, making highlight type of plays. And it's definitely fun to see. Definitely when we had an off day too. It's like their juices were flowing. They were ready to hit the practice field. That's exciting. This team is fun to watch. They seem like they're having fun playing together too. And that's basically the way the Kansas City Chiefs succeed. They play as a family and they trust in each other. That's been basically Reed's motto throughout his tenure in Kansas City. And it looks like it's still running strong no matter who is under that KC logo and wearing that helmet and strapping up. Reed knows how to preach to them, and they love playing for Reed too. I'm excited to see what happens in September week 1 because it's looking good, you guys. And I know it's just training camp. I know I got my hype level at 10, but it's always going to be there. It was there when we were running with Matt Castle as quarterback. When we was like 2-14, I thought we'd win every game. You can't cut that level out of me. So I'm definitely excited to see what brings this season. And I'm excited to watch us contend for another Super Bowl. But with that, I am checking out. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and with that, y'all take care.